So welcome, Dr. Kenneth Ofula, to the Roundtable, OMSC's new series on interviewing scholars and students of world Christianity. It is a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Byung.
Thank you so much. So, Dr. Ofula, do you mind speaking about your academic training? Where were you trained during your studies? And please share about that as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity that I can share of this journey, academic journey, and where I've come from. Was trained in Princeton Theological Seminary in Princeton, New Jersey.
Yeah.
And I spent there 8 years, 2 years doing a Master of Arts in Theological Studies. Then, by the grace of God, I got admitted to the History and Ecumenics program and World Christianity and History of Religions program. And I graduated in the year 2023. 2023, and the leadership of Professor Afe, Raimundo Barreto, and Richard Young.
Yes.
So that has been what has shaped even what I'm doing right now.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Then, after graduating from Princeton Theological Seminary, where have you landed? Where is your current institution?
Yeah. I love the way you say you landed. It's like I took off
Yes.
in May 2023, and by the grace of God, I got an opportunity to land a position at Wycliffe Hall in the University of Oxford. And there I serve as the tutorial fellow in world Christianity, the first in Oxford.
Wow.
A tutorial fellowship specifically in world Christianity. So that is what I'm exploring, and as of now, this is my 8th month. I'm beginning my 8th month since we went to Oxford, and it is exciting.
Wonderful. That's great to hear. Do you mind sharing some of the courses that you might have begun teaching there at Oxford?
Yeah, so since a new program, Oxford does an interesting way. Oxford have a set papers that students do.
Yes.
So it goes through processes. So one of the things that the Wycliffe Hall decided was not to put world Christianity as an offshoot, as an elective.
Yeah.
They wanted to see, because their interest was to see how they can now start changing the worldview of their students, who most of them are from England and mostly Europe. And they wanted to give them this other perspective of Christianity where it is inclining to. So what they did is like they looked at some of the courses that they've been offering, and they now bring me in now to co-teach some of the courses. For instance, Introduction to Church History. I taught another 4 weeks of Introduction to World Christianity within Introduction to Church History.
Oh, wow.
So mission, it's easy because they had a mission track. So what they do in terms of now, when I come in, they invite me to teach an aspect of mission, but with a world Christianity perspective, not mission studies.
Yes.
And the other one was issues in Christian doctrine. So one of the things that I appreciated about Wycliffe Hall and especially Oxford, they saw that most of the scholars and the theologians that were presented in issues in church doctrine were mostly European, and Western, mostly Western known theologians.
Yeah.
So what they did is we introduced Gustavo Gutierrez.
Yeah.
And last term, in the Hillary term, we did Gustavo Gutierrez. And guess what? Next term, which is Trinity term, we'll be doing Mercy Oduyoye.
Oh,
Yes.
wonderful.
So when I came here, they said, let's start slowly, let's start introducing students to these theologians. And I know especially next term will be exciting because I have a photo with Mercy Oduyoye.
Oh, yes. And it's very befitting because we are currently here in Ghana talking with each other. So very fitting. Thank you for that.
Yes.
It's wonderful that you have, landed in such a wonderful place and you're making a difference there. What I'm also curious to know is some of the recent, projects or publications that you've been working on. Do you mind introducing your latest or your current publication or project with us?
Okay, good. So I'm a toddler in this field. Every time I came to this conference and I was seeing these giants and I was telling them, so now you need to know that we are toddlers, we've just gotten in. We are hardly 1 year old and we want to see how we can navigate this space and become relevant. So the first thing that I had to do was translate my dissertation into a book. And I basically studied indigenous puberty rights in the Anglican Church of Kenya. And I was looking at how they're negotiating identities within the capital city using an indigenous puberty right, which has been reimagined in the form of rites of passage experiences, which they call ROPS. So I've already secured a contract, and the book, I'm working on it, should be out 2024, 2025, and it is negotiating identities in African Christianity and looking specifically at All Saints Cathedral and the indigenous rite of passage. Secondly, I'm also interested, there's one of my work which is currently almost into publication, the whole thing about ethnographic imagination and how we are looking at ethnographic imagination with the context of a literary writer. So my work also engages more of world Christianity and African literature. So I was specific, being Kenyan by blood, I ran to what I'm familiar with, and that is one Ngugi wa Thiong'o. And I'm looking at his book and how Ngugi wa Thiong'o imagines ethnographically the Christian story. So I'm making a case that we can still look at Ngugi wa Thiong'o as an ethnographic writing. The same way we can still look at some people's books as an autoethnography. So for me, it's like Ngugi also can be plausibly called an ethnographer through his books, because scholarship is also creative.
Of course. Wow, thank you for sharing some of your ongoing projects, and it's exciting. We look forward to reading the dissertation in a book form, and a dream for all PhD students. Yes, so thank you. And now kind of transitioning into your thoughts about world Christianity as an academic field. We would love to hear some of the past challenges you might have faced when you were as a student, or now as a scholar and as someone teaching in this field. What were some of the challenges you faced in doing research or doing teaching? Could you share briefly about that?
Yeah, just from the terminology of field, because we get admitted to institutions which they don't have fields.
Yes.
So you are doing a field.
Yes.
So they are struggling on where to put it. And that was a challenge. And even when it comes to entering the marketplace, where do you fit? And that is what also one of the challenges I'm going through at Oxford. Because you are a field, but here we have subject areas.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like either there's theology, you're either into the mission studies, or you're either into biblical studies, and they wonder, so where do you fit in world Christianity? So that informed how I wrestled with texts, even as a PhD student then. And also it informed on how you wrestle with methodology. Because you're wondering, this way, should I go theological? Should I go anthropological? Should I go sociological? Or should I just be interdisciplinary? Yeah. So that is one of the key things I think world Christianity students struggles with. Secondly, I think also in terms of there are not very many scholars who've been appointed into main universities. So you can count the number of world Christianity scholars. Not unless, because most have reinvented themselves. Most have evolved. I do say most of the scholars that we have evolved into world Christianity. So for us, we enter into a world Christianity program. You're now trying to shape us now so that we don't evolve, but when we get out, we are now the world Christianity scholars. So you hear different perspectives, because all these people are advising you, which has become an advantage. It has become an advantage because you live as a three-legged student. So I saw that when I'm engaging with students now, I can speak theology, I can speak mission, I can speak things with interreligious, because I've understood the intercultural theologies, and I can speak social science, because that's my approach in terms of sociology of religion. So that gives you an upper hand. getting into the market. That has really worked for me. It gives you an upper hand in terms of when you're teaching an undergraduate class, you're able now to look at a student's work from an umbrella position. So it's not a linear position, because I believe these students come from an umbrella place. And when they come to the universities, where now we are trying to give them a linear thinking, so you can understand where they're coming from and how you're channeling their thoughts. So world Christianity as a student is a plus, a big plus. When you get into a university that has got no world Christianity, you can fit with your interdisciplinary nature. But now working out on how you can now navigate and now give it now a form. So I still appreciate the field. I hope it won't take long before we get our area.
Of course.
Yes.
Rather than hearing challenges, I hear a lot of positivity, a lot of encouragement as current PhD student in this field. But thank you for sharing some of your thoughts about your experiences as well in going into an institution, especially that is really new to world Christianity. I also wanted to ask you about the future of our field. What is something that is missing? What is something that needs to be discussed a little bit more in regards to our way moving forward for world Christianity? Do you mind sharing some of your thoughts on that?
Methodology.
Methodology.
I've come to believe scholarship starts and ends at methodology. Because world Christianity is adventurous. That's one thing I've come to realize. World Christianity, as a way, it looks at the world differently from others. It's like it unstructures your thinking. Then now brings you to, it's like it can either move you from belief to practice and vice versa. You can start from practice to belief. That for me, then you are wrestling with the question of, since you're dealing with issues of life and issues with diverse people in the globe, methodology that somebody will use from the global north, when you go down now to the global south, you're asking, how do you wrestle with that? So for me, world Christianity should really rethink methodology. Really rethink methodology in terms of appreciating lived experiences. And by appreciating lived experiences in terms of, it should be a bottom-up kind of scholarship. A bottom-up kind of scholarship that honors the voices of your sources, and not only honors the voices, structures the voice of your sources in an intellectually rigorous place. Secondly, I'm glad we are in Ghana. Being in Ghana, I'm looking at in terms of next time we will be in Brazil, maybe somewhere in Latin America. Next time we'll be in Korea and Asia. I'm looking at, let conferences of world Christianity be alive to world Christianity. That, for me, that is key. it's like if you're able to do, you realize that it's like you're now able to appreciate the sources and why these people do theology the way they do, why they do their research the way they do, and some of the things that they encounter as they proceed. So that world Christianity comes to a point of, we need to be open to people rethinking approaches to methodology. But one globally that I'm really looking for, I hope we'll focus on, is we need to catch up in terms of world Christianity is going transpartial. And the transpartiality of world Christianity itself, we need now to look at how is the social media space, how is the internet space, how is the AI space now influencing world Christianity. Of course, it is still tender, but it is good to also to have a focus and try to wrestle with what we have right now and how to unpack it in the future. Why? Because world Christianity is also generational.
Of course,
I look at that generational, and I'm sitting back and I'm wondering, in the next 10 years, what will we be discussing about Christianity? And how can we set the foundation now so that they can become a point of reference? Andrew Walls and Sunny, generations before, they set up what we're discussing now. So for me, it's like, what are the foundational things that next 10 years, with this generation, being very cognizant of the things that are happening in this generation, what will be their theories and foundations even coming forth. So a very rigorous scholarship.
I'm so glad you mentioned the next generation, thinking about generations to generations, because as a recent graduate of Princeton Seminary, you have now your PhD. In a way, this is kind of wrapping up our discussion today. I would love to hear any advice that you might have for doctoral students or future students that might be interested in our field. Any advice for them regards to their studies, research, or about anything in general?
Those seminars you do, they're not a waste of time. Those seminars you do, they're not a waste of time.
Yeah.
Because it's those seminars that has become my foundation. When I am discussing and or I'm engaging in a course that was not fully part of my research work.
Yeah.
Be wild and wide in your seminar approach. Because you're going to a space where students think differently and they believe, they have this imagination that you are a PhD student, you know. And you know the risk of world Christianity, we call it interdisciplinary. So they imagine you're also interdisciplinary
Yes.
in your thinking and orientation. For me, I've come to appreciate the people do 2 years and all that. I've come to honor those 2 years.
Yeah.
Those 2 years and those notes, keep them.
Yes.
Those reflections, keep them. I do tell some of my students, it's like, there's some engagement that I'm engaging with you. There are some conversations we had at a seminar level. And some things that I'm telling you, they're things that were sharpened by my colleagues. And I'm able now to see now in light. So when I face it, I remember Byung said this. I remember Tom said. I remember Mead said this. I remember Ruth said this. Brianna one time said this. It keeps reminding. So when I go back to my hard, rough notes. That I'm able now to make connections. And secondly, I've come to realize most of my research motivations are also coming from the notes I took during seminars.
Yes.
Because you're in a seminar, it's like an idea comes in, you write it down, and you end up, you've even developed it so well. But of course, you don't have the time to build it up. But when you're in class, when you go back to the notes, you realize its relevance with regard to what is happening today. And it shapes a lot. I had an interview with BBC, BBC Focus on Africa, and guess what? New religious movement seminar that I did was pivotal. And that was 5 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So that for me, and number two, for PhD students, let's get collegial. Let's have conversation. I appreciated the interaction we started with Emory and when we were in Princeton. Let's expand it.
Yeah.
So that we don't need this conference for us to have our own pre-conference, our small conferences. Let's get collegial. And finally, when we come to these conferences, and my appeal is to universities and faculty to see how they can lobby for more PhD students to come for these conferences. I was telling one of the professors, the place for, is it the student session of, for where they present their work?
Yes.
Should even be given 2 hours. Because that is where I began to. I presented my own. That for me will be helpful. And finally, professors to be open with students. Let that mentor-mentee relationship, I've seen it's unique, let it be genuine. Because we are dependent on, there's what you know, but you don't know. And it's unless you open up to us, we cannot discover it. We long for it. We cannot know the beauty of what you, the beauty of a flower unless the flower blossoms. So I'm asking our mentors, please open up, blossom, so that we are able to see. Don't lock us out. Open up to us. There are things we really want to draw out from you.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. What I'm hearing is such genuine and very practical advice for our doctoral students, for those interested in pursuing studies in world Christianity. And I really appreciate your genuineness and your wisdom that you shared upon us today, this morning. I know I haven't asked you this because I wanted this to be spontaneous.
Yes.
Can you answer this question for me in one sentence?
Yes.
World Christianity is?
World Christianity.
Very good, sir. Thank you so much for your time
so
today.
much. Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it. And I'm glad that, you know, in World Christianity, we don't only have to meet in the North American context. We're meeting here in Ghana. And I'm so glad that we did this interview today.
And thank you
so
for the
much.
opportunity. I'm humbled. Blessings, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.